Hello guys! In this video I want to show you my first impression about Grid Legends, available on February 2022. And I tell you what I like it and what I dislike it. Keep in mind this is a build of the game which offers just 12 different races and it doesn't reflect the final version. But there are a lot of new features and improvements compared to Grid 2019, which we can see already and I can't wait to tell you. Let's start from the physics. A thing I really disliked in Grid 2019 was the physics. Don't get me wrong, I know the Grid series is a pure arcadish game, but the game released in 2019 was too hard, especially with the controller. In 99% of cases, curbs, or curbs if you prefer, make you spin, and sometimes even with driving assist. Well, this issue is finally fixed in Grid Legends. Your car doesn't spin anymore if you take a curb, even without assists. What about the tires model? Great improvement there. I mean, the physics is still arcade, but it's a bit more simulative compared to Grid 2019, especially when you slide or you lose grip, which is more progressive now, and cars don't oversteer too much like the previous chapter. Cars differentiation is more evident now. Driving an oversteering old Shelby Cobra feels totally different to an understeering front-wheel drive Clio Cup, or to a grippy Porsche 911 GT1. Very quickly you'll find your favorite car class between all the 130 cars present in game. Talking about the setup, it's exactly the same of the previous game, and it's quite limited in terms of customization. But it's perfectly understandable, considering we're talking about an arcade game. For the fast feedback, considering this is a pre-release version of the game, luckily my TGT2 was recognized by the game, but the force feedback itself was pretty basic. Yeah, you can feel the vibration while passing on curbs, but they are a bit light. Good response of the weight transfer effect and in drift situations. I just want to tell you a curious anecdote. During the press conference, someone asked to the developers if Grid Legends was a game made for steering wheels or for controllers. The developers answered with extreme decision, "For steering wheels, no doubts!" Like we were in front of contender of iRacing or Assetto Corsa. Yeah, every racing game is better if played with steering wheel. But come on, we're in front of an arcade racing game, which in my opinion works perfectly with controller, because I played with both controller and steering wheel without any issue. About the AI, here we refine the great one you had in previous game, which was one of its strongest points. Even if here it's slightly less aggressive, it defends the position when you try to attack it, and it's more aggressive with itself. In fact, it assisted in a lot of accidents between the AI, making the race more realistic. Of course, the Nemesis mode, if you hit too hard someone and the possibility to order to your teammate to go fast, slower or overtake, make their good return in Grid Legends. I suggest people to set the difficulty on hard, because on medium you'll get the first position very easily. On the graphics part, there aren't big changes compared to the previous Grid. In my opinion, they looks good for this current gen, especially the light effects, but I think the saturation of the color is too high and slightly ruins the amazing work made by Codemasters. Electronic Arts. Don't hate me for this, but I prefer Grid 2019 on the graphics parts. Anyway, I want to praise the great job with the Cockpit cam. More immersive than ever, and more usable compared to a lot of arcade games. The mesh system is well implemented, despite developers told me they are still working at it. Body deformation is modest for the moment, but the mechanical ones are well implemented. I highly discourage to drive with tires punctured or with broken steering. And of course, if you don't pay enough attention, it's easy to kill your car. As I told you, this is a pre-release mode just for the press, so it doesn't offer the career mode, which was one of the main reasons why Grid 2019 was boring and repetitive. But during the press conference, the developer told us the game will offer an intense story mode featuring famous actors which come from the series Sex Education and Ghost of Tsushima, which promise us to give us an unforgettable experience with a lot of variety.
Champion. Soon to be 6 times. That's a new record.
Developers told me also the online mode is cross-platform between Xbox, PlayStation and PC. But the most interesting thing is you can join in the middle of the race, taking place of a car which was driven previously by the AI. In my opinion, this is extremely good for the immediacy. But it will create confusion for someone, especially if the car is hard to drive and he has to immediately get used to the control. A great news is the introduction of few game modes, such elimination, where every 30 seconds the last 2 drivers are eliminated, a drift mode, or a super truck race with jumps, and a very interesting driving approach thanks to the very soft suspensions.
Come on, I think you've hit them one too many times.
But if it isn't enough, Grid Legends allows you to create a multi-class race, online and offline, to add even more fun to the gameplay. Not a big effort in terms of originality, since we saw all these modes already in a lot of racing games, but they give you way more hours of fun and entertainment. Grid Legends is trying to fix the big issues of Grid 2019, and better than expected. More variety, less repetitiveness, more content, and an improved driving system which finally gives you a satisfying driving pleasure thanks to the new tires model. I hope this will be the Grid which many people were waiting for since the glorious 3 chapters on PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360.
We will watch your career with great interest.